You know, major depression is one of the biggest health challenges we face today. But what if a potential solution, one that works incredibly fast and in a completely new way, has been hiding in plain sight? Today, we're going to dive deep into a fascinating new study that explores exactly that, how a single dose of psilocybin might be able to literally rewire the brain.
Okay, so let's start with why this research is so incredibly important. As you can see here, nearly 1 out of every 3 people with major depression finds that the standard, first-line treatments, well, they just don't work. And that's not just a number on a page, right? That represents a huge gap in our mental health care and an unbelievable amount of human suffering.
All right, so here's the roadmap for today. We're going to start with the problems scientists are up against, then look at their pretty radical new hypothesis. We'll follow them right into the lab to see the experiments, we'll actually get to see the brain physically changing, and then we'll wrap up by talking about what this all could mean for the future. First up, the depression dilemma. Let's really dig into why researchers are so desperately searching for better and especially faster treatments.
See, even for the patients who do respond to the antidepressants we have now, it can take weeks, sometimes even months, to feel any real improvement. And that is a dangerously long time to wait when someone is in the absolute depths of a depressive episode.
And look, don't just take my word for it. This is a direct quote from the scientists themselves. This tells you right away, this isn't just some academic curiosity for them. It's a mission. They're on the hunt for something that works better and works way, way faster.
Which brings us to a really compelling and maybe a little unconventional idea. Let's explore the hypothesis that psychedelics could actually open up a whole new pathway to healing.
So what is psilocybin? Well, it's the active compound in what people call magic mushrooms. But what's really getting scientists excited is that clinical studies are showing it can produce antidepressant effects that are both super rapid and incredibly long-lasting. It's so promising, in fact, that the US FDA has actually given it breakthrough therapy designation to help speed up its development. Now, to really get how psilocybin might work, we need to wrap our heads around this crucial concept: neuroplasticity. At its core is just the brain's ability to change and adapt. Think of it as your brain's superpower to literally rewire its own circuits. See, depression is often linked to a loss of these connections. So the big hypothesis here isn't that psilocybin is just covering up symptoms, but that it's physically helping the brain heal and rebuild itself. Okay, so the theory sounds good, but how do you actually test it? This is where we head into the lab and see how the researchers put psilocybin to the test in mice, looking first for changes in their behavior and then digging into the biology.
So how in the world do you measure something like hope or despair in a mouse? Well, one of the classic, though controversial methods is the forced swim test. The idea is that a mouse showing depressive-like behaviors will give up trying to swim much faster. The big question for the scientists was, could a single dose of psilocybin make these mice more resilient?
And the results were, wow. They were immediate and they were dramatic. The mice that got psilocybin, they just kept fighting. They kept swimming for much, much longer than the control group. They showed more resilience. But here's the real kicker. This wasn't some temporary flash in the pan. The effect was still there 24 hours later, and even 7 days later. A single dose created a lasting change.
Okay, so it helps with resilience. That's one thing. But what about the kind of deep, chronic depression that's caused by long-term stress? To test that, the scientists used a different model. They basically simulated chronic stress in mice, which we know from other studies causes neurons in the brain to kind of wither and weaken their connections, a lot like what we think happens in the human brain during depression.
And this graph, it just says it all. The stressed mice, the cort group, they pretty much lost their sweet tooth. They showed way less interest in sugar water. And that's a classic sign of what we call anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure. But then look at the group that got psilocybin. Boom! Their enjoyment of the sweet treat bounced right back to normal levels. They were finding pleasure again. So the behavioral changes were clear. They were powerful. But why was this happening? This next part is the most important step, looking inside the brain itself to see if they could actually see this neuroplasticity happening. This is really the moment of truth in the study. We're moving from just watching what the mice do to looking at their actual biology. Could the scientists literally see the rewiring that they thought was happening?
And here it is. This is the visual proof. I know these images look a little complex, but the takeaway is incredibly simple. On the left, you've got a neuron from a stressed mouse. It looks kind of shriveled and bare. But on the right, the neuron from a stressed mouse that got psilocybin, It looks like a tree in springtime, just bursting with new branches. And this is not a metaphor. This is a photograph of the brain physically rebuilding itself.
So how on earth does this happen, like down at the molecular level? Well, it looks like psilocybin flips a couple of master switches. First, it boosts the proteins that act like the bricks and mortar for building stronger connections between neurons. And second, it fires up a chemical pathway that you can basically think of as miracle grow for your brain cells. It just tells them to grow and thrive.
So let's just recap the physical changes we're seeing here. Psilocybin led to more branches on each brain cell, more connection points on those branches, and it even seemed to promote the growth of entirely new neurons. This is neuroplasticity, live and in action.
Okay, what the scientists found in these mice is, well, it's pretty remarkable. But what does it all mean for us, for humans? Let's zoom out in this final section and think about what this research could mean for the future. So this is really the whole story, the big takeaway from the study. It suggests this beautiful causal chain. You get a single dose of psilocybin that kicks off a molecular signal, turning on the brain's growth mode. This leads to a rapid physical rewiring of the brain. And that leads to the fast and lasting antidepressant effects. It connects the drug to the cell to the behavior.
And that just leaves us with this one massive, powerful question to think about. If we have something that can physically remodel the very structure of the brain within hours and have that effect last for days, what could that really mean for the future of mental health care? Now, obviously, this is still early research, but it points towards a profound shift in how we might one day think about and treat depression.